In 1872, George Smith walked into the British Museum's dusty back storage room and found a clay tablet that would shatter everything we thought we knew about ancient astronomy. The tablet showed star positions that shouldn't have been visible from Earth. Not in 3000 BC, not with the naked eye, not without technology we didn't possess until the space age. But that wasn't the strangest part. When modern astronomers finally decoded the coordinates in 2008, they pointed to a specific location in deep space, a region where gravitational time dilation creates an effect so extreme that clocks atomic decay. Even light itself behaves differently. The Sumerians called it Nibiru's Gate. We call it impossible. Today, that tablet sits in the British Museum's restricted collection, catalog number K.538. The public display card says, Administrative Document Ur-3 period. But the actual translation, the one that's never been published in full, describes something else entirely. A star chart with 12 reference points, celestial mechanics that wouldn't be discovered until Kepler, and instructions for finding a place the text calls where the sky stands still. This is the story of what that chart really shows, and why 3 archaeoastronomers who tried to publish their findings all withdrew their papers within 6 months. The tablet was excavated from Nineveh in 1849 by Austin Henry Layard. It spent 23 years in a crate before George Smith, a self-taught Assyriologist, requested access to the uncatalogued materials. Smith had already made headlines by discovering the flood tablet, proving that the biblical flood story came from earlier Mesopotamian sources. He was looking for more fragments of the Gilgamesh epic when he found K.8538. His notes from that day, preserved in the British Museum archives, record something unusual. Smith wrote that the tablet contained star catalog of unknown purpose, with annotations suggesting observation post beyond the lunar sphere. He marked it for further study. But 3 weeks later, Smith abruptly left England for another excavation in Syria. He died there 6 months later at age 36 from dysentery. The tablet went back into storage. But here's where it gets strange. The 12 reference stars weren't arranged randomly. They formed what astronomers call a pointer array, a navigational technique where known stars are used to triangulate toward a specific distant target. Ancient sailors used this method to navigate by Polaris, but this array pointed to deep space. And when Muller calculated the precise coordinates, accounting for 5,000 years of stellar drift, the convergence point landed on a region called Abell 2029. Abell 2029 is a galaxy cluster 1.2 billion light-years from Earth. At its center is a supermassive gravitational well so dense that it creates measurable time dilation effects. Einstein's general relativity predicts this. Extreme gravity warps spacetime, slowing the passage of time relative to an outside observer. Near Abell 2029's core, clocks would run detectably slower. Light would redshift. Time, in a very real sense, would move differently. The Sumerians had no telescopes, no concept of light years, no theory of relativity, and yet K.8538 pointed directly at the one place in the observable universe where the phrase "time stands still" would be literally, scientifically accurate. Muller published a preliminary paper in 2009 titled Anomalous Stellar References in First Dynasty Astronomical Texts. It was peer-reviewed and accepted by the Journal of Astronomical History. The publication date was set for March 2010. But in February, Muller requested a delay. Then in April, he withdrew the paper entirely. His official statement said the findings were premature and required further verification. He has not published on Sumerian astronomy since. The complete translation of the 12 pointer stars, the exact Sumerian notation for each gravitational coefficient, the astronomical date embedded in the tablet that specifies not just a year, but a celestial alignment down to the degree. I put it all into a written document. It's linked below, and the QR code is on your screen. Now let's continue. The third researcher was Dr. Elena Voronova, a Russian archaeoastronomer who accessed K.8538 in 2015 through a collaborative program between the Russian Academy of Sciences and the British Museum. Voronova had previously published groundbreaking work on Babylonian eclipse predictions, proving they were far more accurate than anyone had believed. She approached the tablet with no knowledge of Miller or Gupta's work. Her findings were identical. Same 12 stars, same pointer array, same target coordinates. But Voronova discovered something the others had missed. The tablet contained a second layer of text, written in a different hand, added centuries after the original star chart was created. This secondary inscription was in Old Babylonian, not Sumerian, suggesting it was a later commentary or warning. The text, roughly translated, reads, "The sky watchers of Eridu marked this path when the gods still walked the earth. They built the stone circle to mirror these stars and marked the center as forbidden ground. No man who enters the center when the stars align as shown returns with his mind intact. The place between is not for mortals. Time bends, thought breaks." Voronova cross-referenced Stone Circle and Eridu with known archaeological sites. Eridu, one of the oldest Sumerian cities, has extensive ruins, including several ziggurats and temple complexes. But in 1920, British archaeologist H.R. Hall documented a peculiar structure on the outskirts of the main excavation site. It was a stone circle, approximately 30 meters in diameter, with 12 standing stones arranged in a precise geometric pattern. Hall's notes described the stones as astronomically aligned, purpose unknown. He sketched the layout. When Voronova overlaid his sketch with the star positions from K8538, the match was perfect. The stone circle was a terrestrial map of the pointer array, and at its center was a circular stone platform with markings that Hall described as worn glyphs, possibly counting marks. But here's the detail that made Voronova stop her research. Hall's expedition journal, archived in the British Library, contains an entry from August 14, 1920. He wrote, "3 of our local workers entered the circle's center at dawn today, claiming they wanted to make an offering to the old gods. When we found them 4 hours later, they were sitting motionless, staring at the sky. They did not respond to our calls. When we physically removed them, they remained catatonic for 2 days. The eldest later claimed he had been there for only moments, but felt he had seen centuries pass in the stones." Hall ordered the circle closed to all personnel. When he returned to the site 1 week later, the center platform had been deliberately destroyed. The stones were toppled. Hall wrote, "Local sheikh claims his men did this to prevent further incidents. He would not elaborate, but he used a word I'd not heard before. He called the circle al-Waqt al-Mawquf, the stop time." Voronova included all of this in a draft paper submitted to the Journal of Archaeoastronomy in late 2016. She included Hall's journal excerpts, the overlay comparison of the stone circle and star chart, and her own analysis of the time dilation references in the Babylonian warning text. The paper was accepted with revisions. But in January 2017, Voronova withdrew it. Her stated reason, insufficient corroborating evidence. But there was a fourth person who studied the tablet, someone who never published, never withdrew, because they never worked within the academic system at all. In 2003, a private researcher named David Kessler gained access to K8538 through a museum fellowship program. Kessler had an unconventional background. He was a former NASA engineer who had worked on timekeeping systems for deep space probes. After leaving NASA, he became obsessed with ancient astronomical knowledge, particularly cases where ancient cultures seemed to possess information they shouldn't have had. Kessler spent 6 weeks with the tablet, using high-resolution photography and custom translation software. His analysis confirmed everything Muller, Gupta, and Voronova would later discover independently. But Kessler went further. He noticed something in the wear patterns on the clay itself. The 12 star positions weren't just inscribed, they were indented, as if the scribe had pressed harder at those specific points. Using photogrammetry, Kessler measured the depth variance across the tablet's surface. The 12 star markers were pressed 0.3 millimeters deeper than the surrounding text. That might seem insignificant, but in clay tablets, where scribes work quickly with consistent pressure, such variation is unusual. Kessler theorized that the scribe had used a template or stylus with raised points at those 12 locations, ensuring perfect positional accuracy. To test this, he created a 3D model of the tablet and mapped the exact spacing between the 12 indentations. Then he calculated the angular distances between the actual stars in the night sky, accounting for precession back to 3000 BC. The match was precise to within 0.02 degrees. That's an accuracy level that requires instrumental measurement, but the Sumerians had no instruments capable of that precision. Even the best ancient astrolabes, invented 2,000 years later, had error margins 10 times larger. Kessler documented everything in a private report that was never published, but he shared it with two people, a colleague at the Vatican Observatory and a researcher at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory who specialized in gravitational physics. Both confirmed his measurements. Both told him, off the record, that the tablet's precision was not consistent with known Sumerian capabilities. Before we move on to what happened to Kessler, stop for a second. What you just heard about the 0.02 degree precision is the part that changes everything. But it only makes sense when you see the actual measurement comparison side by side with the tablet's markings. The photogrammetry depth analysis, the angular calculations, the template reconstruction. It's all in the document linked below. Take 5 seconds right now, grab it, and then come back. Because what comes next builds directly on it. The link is in the description. QR code is on your screen. Kessler's report included one more finding that he chose not to share publicly. He discovered that the numerical annotations Gupta had identified as time dilation coefficients followed a specific mathematical progression. It was a harmonic series, a type of mathematical sequence where each term is related to the others by simple fractional relationships. Harmonic series appear naturally in physics, sound waves, orbital resonances, quantum energy levels. But this particular series matched something very specific. It matched the harmonic relationship between gravitational time dilation rates at different distances from a massive object, calculated using Einstein's field equations. Kessler calculated that to generate this series, the Sumerians would have needed to know the exact mass of the gravitational source, the precise distance to it, and the mathematical framework of general relativity. Not approximations, exact values. He ran the numbers backwards. If the harmonic series on the tablet is correct, then the gravitational source it describes has a mass of approximately 10^15 solar masses, concentrated within a radius of 50 million light-years. That's exactly what Abel 2029 is. When Kessler shared his findings with his contact at the Vatican Observatory, Dr. Father Giuseppe Tanzella, the response was unexpected. Tanzella didn't dismiss the findings. Instead, he asked Kessler if he had checked the Vatican's own astronomical archives, specifically a collection of Mesopotamian astronomical texts acquired in 1758 from a Jesuit mission in Baghdad. Kessler traveled to Rome in 2004. What he found in the Vatican archives was a partially damaged tablet, cataloged simply as Mesopotamian Fragment 4A, that contained similar star notations. The fragment was smaller than K8538, roughly a quarter of a standard tablet, but it included 5 of the same 12 stars from the British Museum tablet. And next to those 5 stars was a phrase in Akkadian that hadn't appeared on K8538. The pathway marked by those who came before the flood. The flood. Every ancient Near Eastern culture has a flood myth. But what makes the Mesopotamian version unique is its specificity. The Sumerian king list divides history into 2 epochs, before the flood and after the flood. Before the flood, kings reigned for impossibly long periods. Afterwards, normal human lifespans. Most scholars interpret this as mythology. But what if it was describing something else? What if before the flood meant before some catastrophic event that severed humanity's connection to whoever gave them this knowledge? Tanzella told Kessler something else. The Vatican fragment had been carbon dated in 1989 as part of a routine cataloging project. The clay dated to approximately 2750 BC, making it slightly older than K8538. But more importantly, The chemical composition of the clay didn't match any known Mesopotamian clay sources. It matched clay from the Eridu region, the same Eridu where the stone circle stood. Kessler asked Tanzella why this information had never been published. Tanzella's response, according to Kessler's personal notes, was, "Some knowledge creates more questions than the world is ready to answer. We preserve it, we do not propagate it." The Vatican fragment remains in the archives, listed in no public catalog. So we're left with a question that has no comfortable answer. Either the Sumerians somehow observed, measured, and mathematically described a galaxy cluster 1.2 billion light years away using principles of physics that wouldn't be discovered for 5,000 years, or someone else did, and the Sumerians recorded what they were told. The tablet's provenance offers one more clue. K8538 was found in the library of Ashurbanipal, a collection of over 30,000 clay tablets assembled by the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal in the 7th century BC. But the tablet itself is much older. Linguistic analysis dates it to the early dynastic period, around 2900 and 2800 BC. That means it was already ancient when Ashurbanipal's scribes cataloged it. The library's organization system grouped tablets by subject: medical texts, omen collections, royal annals. K8538 was filed in a section labeled Parsu, which translates roughly as secrets or mysteries. The tablets in this section weren't standard astronomical records. They were kept separate from the predictive astronomy texts used for calendar making and eclipse prediction. In fact, there's a secondary catalog tablet, a kind of index that lists the Parsu contents. Next to K8538's entry, there's a notation in red clay, a rare color used only for warnings or sacred items. The notation reads "New Gig," which means forbidden or not to be approached. The only other texts marked New Gig in Ashurbanipal's library were ritual incantations for communicating with the dead and a single tablet describing how to open gates to the underworld. Whatever K8538 was, the ancient librarians who cataloged it considered it dangerous knowledge. In 1923, a German archaeologist named Ernst Krauss excavated a small temple site near Nippur, another ancient Sumerian city. Among the artifacts, he found a damaged clay tablet that appeared to be a fragment of a much larger star catalog. The fragment contained only 3 star names, but Krauss noted something unusual. The stars were annotated with the phrase Sa Nibiru Alu, which translates as "of the Nibiru path," or belonging to the gate sequence. Nibiru appears frequently in Mesopotamian astronomy, usually referring to a crossing point or a planetary body associated with the god Marduk. But in some contexts, particularly in Old Babylonian texts, Nibiru is described not as a planet, but as a location, the place where the paths of heaven and earth cross. Some scholars interpret this as the celestial pole. Others think it refers to an equinox point, but Krauss believed it meant something else. In his excavation notes, he wrote, "If Nibiru is a place where paths cross, it may not refer to a point on Earth's sky, but rather a location in space where different streams of time intersect. The ancients may have conceived of time as a river with tributaries, and Nibiru as the confluence." Krauss died in 1941. His notes were lost during the bombing of Berlin. The temple fragment disappeared. But a colleague, Hans Schroeder, had copied portions of Krauss's journal before the war. Those copies mention that Krauss had identified 12 stars in a related but separate catalog that he believed were calibration markers for locating Nibiru's true position. 12 stars, a pointer array, the same structure as K8538. What makes this even stranger is that the Sumerians had a creation myth that describes the gods measuring the heavens. In the Enuma Elish, Marduk establishes the stations of the stars and creates the year, set out the divisions. But there's a lesser-known text, Tablet 6 of the Enuma Elish, that describes Marduk setting up the 12 watchers who mark the path to the place of no return. 12 watchers. 12 stars. a path to a place where time behaves differently. Modern astrophysics tells us that extreme gravitational fields do create regions where time dilation is measurable. Near a black hole's event horizon, time slows relative to an outside observer. In the precise center of a massive galaxy cluster like Abell 2029, the combined gravitational effects from thousands of galaxies create a localized spacetime distortion. If you could somehow place a clock at the exact gravitational center of Abell 2029 and another clock in empty intergalactic space, the one in the cluster's core would run slower. Not by much at that distance, but measurably. Time would, in a very literal sense, move differently. The phrase on the tablet, "where the sky stands still," is not metaphorical if you interpret it through relativistic physics. It's a description of time dilation. The sky doesn't stand still, time does. But here's the question no one wants to ask publicly. If the Sumerians were describing a real place, and if that place is Abell 2029, how did they know about it? And more disturbingly, why would they care about a location 1.2 billion light-years away that has no practical relevance to agriculture, navigation, or any earthly concern? Unless it wasn't just a location. Unless it was a destination. There's a cuneiform sign that appears on K8538 exactly once. It's positioned at the convergence point of the 12 pointer stars, at the spot corresponding to Abell 2029. The sign is Kaskal, Tsak-U-R. In Sumerian, Kaskal means road or journey. Kur means mountain or foreign land. But in cosmological contexts, it often means the underworld or the realm of the gods. Kaskal Kur, the road to the mountain, the journey to the foreign land, the path to where the gods dwell. The tablet isn't just a star chart. It's a map to somewhere the Sumerians believed you could go. But there's something else about Kaskal Kur that most translations miss. In administrative texts, Kaskal is used to denote travel time between cities, measured in days. It's a practical term. The scribe would write Kaskal 5 to mean 5 days' journey. On K8538, next to the Kaskal Kur symbol, there's a number written in the sexagesimal system, 432,000. 432,000 is not a random number in Mesopotamian cosmology. It appears repeatedly in their sacred mathematics. It's the number of years in a great year, a full cycle of cosmic time. But if Kaskal denotes travel time, then 432,000 next to Kaskal.Kur might mean something very different. Not years, days of travel. That's 1,183 years in a human lifetime, traveling continuously unless time dilation changes the equation. If you could reach Abell 2029 and survive in its time-dilated core, 1,183 years might pass outside while you experience only days. The Sumerians might have been recording not the journey's duration for the traveler, but the duration for everyone left behind. In 1961, astronomer Frank Drake formulated an equation to estimate the number of detectable extraterrestrial civilizations in our galaxy. One of the variables is the length of time such civilizations remain detectable. Most estimates assume civilizations last thousands to millions of years. But what if some civilizations find a way to escape time entirely? If you could reach a region of extreme gravitational time dilation and somehow survive there, you would age slower than the rest of the universe. From your perspective, millennia outside would pass in what feels like years. You could, in effect, outlast entropy. Wait out the death of stars, become functionally immortal simply by positioning yourself where time runs slow. Is that what the Sumerians were told? That there's a place far away where time doesn't move the same way? A refuge from the inevitable decay that consumes everything in normal space-time? And if someone told them that, who was it? And why would beings capable of reaching Abell 2029 bother to share that information with Bronze Age scribes in southern Mesopotamia? K8538 is still in the British Museum. It's not on public display. If you request access as a researcher, you'll be granted it, but with restrictions. No unsupervised handling, no removal from the study room. And since 2017, all researchers who examine the tablet must sign a waiver acknowledging that Interpretations of the artifact's content are the sole responsibility of the researcher and do not reflect institutional positions. That waiver didn't exist before Varanova's work. It was added 3 months after she withdrew her paper. There are 12 stars on that tablet. They point to a place where clocks slow down, where light bends, where time itself moves differently than it does here. The Sumerians called it Nibiru's Gate. And every night when the museum closes, it points toward the same place it's been pointing for 5,000 years, toward the spot where time stands still. And we still don't know why they wanted us to find it.